We're standing here in front of the original 4 buildings that were built at the original entrance to this property. This property was purchased by the Lutheran Church in America, and they brought Bob Linder out here in November of 1973 to start a new church. They bought this 5 acres of land from the Methodist Church for $75,000. This was the only entrance to the property at that time, and it was a chip seal parking lot, and would get kind of dusty, and when it rained in the summertime it would get a little muddy even. The road out here was just 2 lanes. It was a 2-lane highway, and the apartments next door that are here now were not here, and actually it was a vacant lot all the way up to the corner of Bear Canyon. There were ranches behind us, and sometimes you can hear animals even back there still today. There's still some of those ranches. These buildings behind me were finished in 1978. Before that, the church worshiped in the Villa Caprice apartments and then Wrightstown School, and then moved over here in 1978. We're standing in the chapel now. A chapel, the original sanctuary. Before the remodel here, it went out to the edges here, and there were glass doors which allowed us to use for overflow on Sundays when we had heavy attendance. They originally started with 1 service in this space and then moved to 2 services before 1980 or so. One of the things that caused the congregation to grow quite rapidly in the late 70s was the movement of IBM to Tucson from Boulder, Colorado. Many people, at least from Boulder, were transferred down here. And so the church prospered and grew, and Bob Linder did a great job getting things established. Bob left at the end of 1981, and I came and began work in September of 1982. This building really functioned well for us. If you look behind me, there's an interesting thing. There's baptismal font and a lectern, and there's an altar over in another part of the church now that was handmade by one of our members, Dan Eklund. And copper was a big thing because of Arizona being a copper state. And then the window behind here was supposed to come to the ground, and you see this little brown sort of like closet with a door, and we used it eventually to store communion things in, but the window was supposed to stop at the ground, but it was put in wrong, and so you have part of it cut off by the lights up there, but it's still a beautiful window with the eastern sun in the morning. The chapel here then was one of the 4 buildings on this quad that were originally built. Outside and to the right is the preschool offices now, but those were the original offices for the church. Across the courtyard are classrooms. Those are the original classrooms of the preschool, which also began in about 1978 when these buildings were finished. We're standing in front of Linder Hall, which is across from the chapel in the courtyard. When these 4 buildings were originally finished, there was about 8,000 square feet that was useful for ministry in this place. We soon outgrew that and began a campaign in early 1982-83 to raise money to build what we now call the Ed Building. This building was named after Bob Linder in 1984 to celebrate the 10th anniversary. We're standing in Linder Hall. Originally, the building ended right here where these folding doors now exist. We remodeled this in 1995, adding extra about 1,000 square feet, and then we remodeled the kitchen with an industrial stove and a dynamite commercial dishwasher that allowed us to have many, many dinners and potlucks and receptions after funerals and things like that in this room, and it's still used extensively for that. We added onto that building, and we'll soon go there and look at that, the Facel Nursery, which is divided in two. There's a section for older children and then for babies, infants, and so forth. This was part of the remodel project of Linder Hall, but it actually was an additional space that we built. We had a small nursery that was in the original building section, and we had grown to the point where we needed something much larger for all the little kids. Children have always been a huge part of our ministry here, from Sunday school, preschool, youth ministry, and so forth. We have a plaque up here in honor of the Facel family. There's a story behind that. On Christmas Eve of 1995, I believe it was, I was at the door shaking hands when Jim Facel came out and on behalf of his family gave us the money that we needed to finish this project. It was quite a substantial sum and brought tears to my eyes on Christmas Eve. We put this plaque up in honor of that family, and family's still here and quite involved in the congregation, and we thank them for their generosity and their help in completing this beautiful space that has a division for older children and younger children, and is just a wonderful, welcoming place. And the preschool now uses it too as one of their classrooms. Behind me is an area that's going to be redone in the spring, but it is something that's very sentimental. Bill Rundle Jr., one of young people that was a college-age student, was in a car accident coming back from spring break in Rocky Point, and his parents helped to landscape this area originally in memory of him. Originally, this space, when we first were up in the other buildings, had a double-wide trailer on it for a short time that came from St. Joseph's Hospital, and it helped us do Sunday school work. Directly to the north is the Ed building that we built in 1983 to give us 8 classrooms, much needed space, and was the first building project that we did after the original buildings had been built. There's been 5 major building projects on the property as the congregation grew. Behind me is the educational building that I referenced earlier. It was finished in 1983, giving us 8 classrooms, but also it had movable walls, which allows us to use the building at sometimes for congregational dinners and so on, which we don't do so much anymore because we have larger space to do that in. But it really was a nice unit to help us do ministry as the church continued to grow. This is the entrance to the main sanctuary now. By 1988, we had pretty much run out of space for our 2 services up in the chapel area, and we had already started a 5 o'clock Saturday or 5:30 Saturday evening service. And so we needed more space. We were filling up our space, and we decided to raise money to build a new sanctuary. A pledge program was put together, and we raised $750,000 towards a mortgage of about $1.5 million when it was all done. The building itself has been expanded since then, but at the time that we built this, there was about 9,000 square feet, which came close to almost doubling what we had under roof at the time. The building itself seats 350 according to the fire department, but we have had as many as 700 people in here with extra chairs set up in the narthex and outside, with sound piped outside here under the overhang. It's really a functional building and a beautiful building. When we go inside, I'll explain some more about the symbolism of things in the building. If I had to say I had a favorite building on the campus, even though a building that we're going to look at soon has my name on it, I would say this is my favorite building. A lot of love and planning went into this building, as did the other buildings, but this one is unique. On the floor here in this narthex is a beautiful mosaic of the church's logo again, the saguaro cactus. This was done by Karen Yodais and then refurbished a bit when we remodeled the sanctuary. And it's a beautiful, beautiful work of art, and we are grateful because it really makes this space very special and personalized. behind me on the wall are small stained glass windows, all of which portray different plants that are in the Bible. When the sun shines in the morning from the east, it's very, very pretty. We're now in the main sanctuary. It was built in 1988-89. The first Sunday was Easter of 1989. It was the last Sunday in March. Easter came early that year. The pews hadn't been delivered. They were delayed, and so we had to set up chairs in here. But it was a joyous and fine celebration. The pews came a week later. In the year 2016, this space was remodeled after about 25 years of use. Now it looks as it does. The altar and the pulpit were handmade especially for us by an artist in Phoenix. It has copper inlays in the wood, as well as the cross, which has the copper inlays. The altar itself has 12 copper inlays, symbolizing the 12 disciples gathered at the Last Supper. The pulpit itself has copper inlays symbolizing the Holy Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. The tapestry on the wall is new, part of the remodel, and is for Christmas right now. The light of the world has come in. Originally, there was another tapestry that showed the whole Tanque Verde Valley in a sense, and then different symbols would be put on it during the church year. The stained glass behind the Christmas tree here in the corner is the waters of baptism, then Holy Communion, the two sacraments, and then the ascending Christ, showing how we are with Christ here on earth and then someday be with him in heaven. The stained glass windows over here on the side are faith, hope, and love, coming from Paul's epistle to the Corinthians. And then over by the choir area, the stained glass window is the sign of the dove coming down in the waters of baptism. The organ is an interesting instrument in that it's electronic, but it mimics a pipe organ. There is in the wall area up here a speaker for every voice. In a pipe organ, each pipe is called a voice. The sanctuary itself sits on a front corner of our property. There was quite a debate about whether we should have put it back towards where the Ameline house is, but we decided after a long discussion to put it here in the corner so that everybody driving by on Tanque Verde Road would see it. In order to get it on the corner, the architect, and to get the kind of building the architect wanted, he designed into the plan 72 corners. The building bends 72 times. And so when the foundation was poured, they had to set the rebar with all those corners. And it took a sort of artist finally, and they tried two people and they gave up. And a third person finally, a little man from Mexico who had been doing rebar for years and years and years, came and did the foundation for this place with the 72 corners. Ironically, 72 is a biblical number because Jesus sends out that many disciples to spread the word in one of the Gospels. So I kind of think that there was something going on there. We're standing at the entrance of the Nausin Family Life Center. This building was built in the late 90s, 98 and 99. It was a dream of many people who felt we needed something for the whole congregation during the week. It contains a lot of different things, from a full kitchen and a snack area to a full gymnasium to play basketball and volleyball, to a stage for plays and worship, to a youth room, and also locker rooms and showers, plus classrooms. It was designed that if we ever wanted to have a school here, the whole area here could be turned into classrooms. We have enough classrooms to get to the second grade, and then you would have to add a classroom a year in order to have a school, and it would go down the spine here and connect with the rest of the property. Originally, when this building was first finished, it was simply called the Family Life Center, the family of God living out different ways in this building. to put the name Nausin on it when I left to go to Thousand Oaks, California, to set up the call at Holy Trinity Lutheran Church. And now my wife and I are back here as retirees. But this room has been used in so many different ways. It's multi-purpose. It, as you see right now, it's designed and set up for basketball. It also has standards that will come down for volleyball. It has a stage over here on my right, which allows us to put on plays and so forth. And there is a big window when the stage doors are open that allows us a view of the mountains. Over in that corner is the youth room. We'll go in and take a little view of that. And also then locker rooms on both sides here. Behind me on the wall up here is the logo of the congregation that was designed in the 80s by Linnea Wong, who was the pastor's wife, one of the pastors, Bill Wong, who worked with me. And that logo has withstood the sands of time, so to speak, and still is used on all of our official correspondence as a congregation. We are now in the Cactus Cafe, which is part of the Family Life Center. To my left outside are 3 classrooms that also are used during the week for the preschool kindergarten program. Behind me is a full kitchen and is used in many different ways. We have on our campus now 3 kitchens that get used almost all the time. This is an area for fellowship and also an area where meals, small meals can be served and fellowship can occur also in that way. This room is one of my pride and joy as part of the Family Life Center, to have a dedicated space for our youth, high school, junior high school, and young adults to use this space to have fun, play ping pong, and also to have classes and learning occur, and just to have this space to call their own. Even have a separate lock on the door. Only certain people have the keys to this room because it is space that is dedicated to the youth of the congregation. Originally, the Ameling property that we got, giving us additional 4 acres behind the Family Life Center here, this was the guest house area and the garage area. The Ameling house itself still exists, and it's outside the Family Life Center here. We'll walk over there and take a shot of that in a minute, but it was built in 1948, that house, and this property has grown up around it, and we're so glad it's a part of our property here, and we use it for a library and other space, but this space is all for the youth. Behind me is the Ameling house. As I mentioned before, it was built in 1948, and there was a ranch out here of about 5 acres. Dr. Ameling was a dentist, his son was also, and they were gracious in selling this property to us at a very reasonable rate in the late 80s. We were able to pay for that property through the proceeds of the sale of the parsonage that Pastor Linder had lived in, but he decided to buy his own home, and so the congregation had sold the parsonage, and from the proceeds of that we were able to buy the extra property behind us, which has proven to be a godsend. We were able to build the Family Life Center and a prayer garden, a memorial garden, and an outdoor chapel, as well as extra parking. To my right over here is an outdoor chapel which was built by Jason Bridgman and his father, Bill Bridgman. They did this as Jason's Eagle Scout project. This has been used over the years for a number of worship events, including every Easter for sunrise service. And then I've actually performed a couple weddings out here, and we have an event, a blessing of the animals, and other kinds of events like that in this venue. And then behind me here is the Pathway of the Cross. This is a Stations of the Cross from a Lutheran perspective. It's a prayer garden and a very quiet spot out back here. Bonnie Penny, who was a member of the congregation, had the vision for this project. She later became an ordained ELCA pastor. Her family pretty much financed the whole building of this prayer garden. It's a beautiful spot, and I encourage people to come out here because it's so quiet back here. You hear animals from the ranches that are behind us. This place is called a columbarium, which is the dwelling place for those who have died and have been cremated. This was a project that was spearheaded in the 90s by Jim and Sue Aslan. Since then, quite a few members of TVLC have been buried here. It is something that we celebrate that we can do this, and in this part of our property and so on, it is very peaceful, and when people come to pray and to remember their loved ones, it is really a special spot and has grown that way for many. We've come to the end of our tour, and we've heard an interesting story that how over these 40 some odd years these buildings have come into being and the sacrifices that people made. But in reality in this world, these buildings are merely tools for us to use in ministry. When we leave this place and go to our occupations, go to our homes, go into that world, we are Tanque Verde Lutheran Church. And we have been empowered because we have come to this place, fed with the bread of life, sent forth back into the world as God's people to live out our baptism. Buildings are wonderful things. They're places to come and places to gather, but they're merely tools for us to do the work that God has sent us to do in this place.